All right, we're on. Welcome to the September 12th, 2025 Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship meeting. We are live on YouTube from Littleton Baptist Church in Littleton, Colorado. So let's get started. James, would you like to come up and do a prayer?
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to hear great speaks about your great creation that we treasure so much. We thank you that you did this and that we're here and we can praise your holy name. Father, we pray for others that are holding you up as the creator, as the leader, the foundation for all that we have, all we ever will be. Pray now that you would bless us as we understand, try to understand, and know more and more about your great creation. We pray all in the name of our Heavenly Father and our Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Alrighty, the scripture reading for this evening is Psalm 116, verse 15. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his godly ones. And I have a little story I'd like to read that may shed some insight onto that. Borne along by a crowd of men, Telemachus was drawn into the Colosseum. Among the slaves, the dead animals, the dust, and the blood, he saw gladiators and 80,000 spectators. As the games began, the crowd saw this scrawny little figure making his way out into the fray and saying over and over again, "In the name of Christ, stop." Pleading with the gladiators, "In the name of Christ, stop." One of them plunged his sword into his body. Telemachus fell to the sand of the arena in death with his last words, "In the name of Christ, stop." The gladiators stood, looking at this tiny form lying in the sand, and the roar of the crowd fell to silence. Everyone began streaming out of the Colosseum. That was the last battle to the death between gladiators. One tiny voice that could hardly be heard above the tumult, "In the name of Christ, stop." And the vengeance of God against evil and wickedness was unleashed that day in greater measure by Telemachus' faithful death than by his entire faithful life. So that's, I think, an example of what it means when he says, "Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints." All right, now we'll get on with it. I'd like to introduce our speaker for tonight. Dr. Horton holds a bachelor's degree in biology from Dickinson State College in Dickinson, North Dakota. He earned a doctorate in veterinary medicine from Iowa State University in Ames, Iowa, and a Master of Divinity from Moody Theological Seminary in Chicago, Illinois. Dr. Horton practiced veterinary medicine on both large and small animals in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana for 20 years. During the last 5 years of veterinary practice, he answered God's call to church leadership and began reducing his veterinary practice. Over the years, he established 2 churches in the valley. He served Crossroads Christian Fellowship of Victor, Montana as senior pastor for 21 years. He began full-time as director of IBA in the spring of 2018. Dr. Horton has a passion to see God's word correctly understood, and that begins in Genesis. Many Christians compromise on the clear interpretation of the first 11 chapters as a result of an apparent contradiction between science, so-called, and the Bible. But Dr. Horton observes that an atheistic philosophy has been ruthlessly forced upon much of modern scientific interpretation, leading to a facade that science rules over the Bible. The reality is, however, that scientific observations and data strongly support the solid biblical worldview with no need to compromise on biblical interpretation. So with that, let's welcome our speaker, Dr. Kevin Horton.
Thank you. Our organization is IBA, Institute for Biblical Authority. If you want to look us up, IBA777.org. And people ask, well, why the 777? And the answer is pretty simple. IBA was already taken. And IBA 666 just didn't seem to work well with us. So we go with IBA777.org, and the reason I say that is to help you remember that. Okay, and you can look up, you'll be able to see this and other videos on that website, so it's worth knowing about it. So what are we, IBA? Well, we exist to communicate the Bible as trustworthy and authoritative, beginning with its first word in Genesis 1:1, extending to the last word in Revelation 22:21. And up there is the first word of the Bible. Would somebody read that for me, please? Huh? No. Well, Barashit. Kind of a Barashit, like a sheet on the bed. All right, Barashit. All right, ready? Let's try it now. I'll say first, then you. Barashit.
Barashit.
Hey, some of you rolled the R's, not bad. Barashit. What does it translate? What's the first words?
In the beginning.
In the beginning. So ba is in, and then Rashit is beginning. And so we put the in there, but Barashit. And the last word of the Bible, of course, is in Greek, and that's panton. And anybody know what that translates to? Amen. Amen, but that'd be amen. So it's not. So it's surprising. The last word of the Bible, amen, is put in many translations. But the last word in the Greek is panton, which means all. Seems kind of anticlimactic, doesn't it? May the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Actually, it's not anticlimactic. That's pretty good, isn't it? So that's the last word of the Bible. And we want to tell you that you can believe it from the very beginning to the very end. And so we're going to, there we go. Oh, it went past. There we go, here we go. So there's music, but you just watch us instead. Really? Really? BioLogos is a Christian organization. Christian and science organization. Their goal is to help us in the church realize how we need to reinterpret Genesis so that it matches with modern science. And this is their quote from their website, and I verified it again in case they've removed it. No, it's there boldly still, BioLogos. And they work, and they have multi-million-dollar grants from many big organizations to spread their word. But I'm going to tell you what, my drone, my little old $2,000 drone says, I don't think so. There is evidence of the flood. So I know I might be speaking to the choir or preaching to the choir here, but what is the issue about the flood of Noah? What is the issue? Well, the issue is this. It's either deep time or young earth. And if you believe there's a flood of Noah, you're in the young earth category. And that is surprising to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that say, well, yeah, I believe it. Well, you can't take the first chapters literal. Well, was there a flood of Noah? Oh, yeah. Well, then the earth is young. The earth is young. And so here's what I mean. You see that little bracket there on the Grand Canyon? So just assume that's a hypothetical, say, 100 feet of layers, and from deep time, that might represent 3 million years of Earth history, okay? But from a young Earth point of view, it may be just simply 1 week flood surge during the early stages of the flood. And that's the difference, and that's why the flood of Noah decides that for us. That is the deciding factor. So, if you believe that the Bible is trustworthy, and the flood of Noah was an actual historical event, then these rock layers originated from the flood of Noah in that, actually, first 150 days. Okay, so I'm going to show you this canyon. It's 400 feet from top to bottom. I've been there and I took this picture. Here's my test for you. How many years did it take to cut this canyon? Now, I've done this at fairs, all right, and I show the picture to them, and I get all the answers. You know the answers, right? Oh, million. I mean, that's 400 feet through solid basalt rock. How many years? The answer?
3 days.
3 days. Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. How many of you have heard of Glacial Lake Missoula? Most of you. Okay. All right. So I took that picture here, turned this way. This is Palouse Falls State Park, Washington. And it's beautiful falls cut in 3 days by Glacial Lake Missoula when the dam burst. And I looked at this a year after I took this picture, and I finally saw that thing. And I went, well, look at what that. And they call that the crown. And you look at that, and I look at those little rock projections there, and I wonder how many millions of years you think they would take, spring thaws and snow and water getting down, freezing. How many millions of years would they last? Well, even the secularists will say Glacial Lake Missoula Flood was 13,000 years ago. Conveniently far out beyond the biblical date, by the way. All right, so we're going to talk about Glacial Lake Missoula Flood, and I'm going to film it for you to show some of the structures that a massive flood would cause. Now, this guy is the one who discovered it, J. Harlan Bretz. He was a school teacher, around the turn of the 20th century in Seattle, Washington. And he was interested in geology, didn't have his doctorate yet, he'll eventually earn it. And he received some of the first topographical maps of central Washington state. And this just changed everything for him. It changed his life. Because he's looking at this wide, flat terrain that's gently sloping down, and then all of a sudden, you have these deep, squiggly canyons that drop hundreds of feet in the middle of nowhere. And he said, what is this? And so he took his students in the summer, and they would go out there on a camp, and they would go and hike, sometimes 20 miles a day. They were just killer. He was a killer on working those kids. And they started mapping this out. And he came to discover this, a 3-mile wide waterfall in the desert with no water. And so he started writing this up in journals saying there was a big flood, and he called it the Spokane flood because he could see the water came through Spokane, Washington. And that's all he just knew it came from there. He didn't really pursue what caused it. He just knew there was water there. And he discovered below this thing, this waterfall, deep plunge pools. So this was a massive flow of water. And then I noticed that little island out there, and it looks small, but that thing's 400 feet high. It's high, and it's sort of flat, but not quite. And so he was publishing this in the journals, and eventually in 1927, the Geological Society of Washington, D.C., convened a special meeting to specifically deal with Bretz. You see, they all knew that it was great that he's found all this stuff and he's having fun, but Bretz, we all know this is cut over millions of years. And so Bretz came and presented all of his information, which then the elders corrected him, showing him that his errors of his ways, and he needed to go back and reevaluate. And by the way, none of those elders had set foot in Washington state. All right, but they knew, he saw it. And he knew, he said he went back out, and for years he went back out, kept writing up what he was seeing, and it was clearly flood caused. Okay, so anyways, they also said this at that meeting. What Bretz proposed was too much like a biblical flood. Really? Well, that is terrible. Well, actually, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that scientifically? It's against the paradigm of evolution. That's what it is. Okay, well, at this meeting, there was another guy there, and he was from Missoula, Montana. And I'm trying to do this so it doesn't make that noise. I don't know how to handle that. But, oh, okay, good. Never mind. All right, so this guy is there, and he's watching Bretz get creamed, right? And he knows this is what's coming down. And so he doesn't say much, but he does supposedly turn to one of guy next to him, he said, see, Brett didn't know where the water came from. He didn't know where. He just came from Spokane somewhere. And Pardee turns to the guy next to him and says, I think I know where Brett's water came from. But he kept silent for over 10 years because Brett's was just getting creamed, and eventually he does fess up. Well, what did he see? Well, this is an old cell phone picture, back in the day when we can take pictures with these phones too. You notice how fuzzy it is and all that, but I haven't seen a day this good for a long time. You see the lines on the mountain there? Those are lake lines. They call them strand lines. The river in Missoula, Montana is the Clark Fork of the Columbia River, and it was dammed up by an ice load that slid down from Idaho, slammed into the mountain, covered up modern-day Sandpoint, Idaho, and right on the Idaho-Montana line, it blocked the river up. So every year, as the snow melted off the mountains and rains came down, the lake went higher. The winds blew all summer long, cut a mark in the mountain. The rains come, and then the next year comes along, and it does the same thing, and it works all its way up the mountain, 950 feet above Missoula, Montana. So you can see, this is a drone shot I took from downtown Missoula, and you can see the strand lines on Mount Sentinel and Mount Jumbo, and you can see them, they carved into the mountain. And this is on Mount Jumbo, and these are real definitive. You can see those, and they're level. We see animal lines and other things on hills, but these are water level, like somebody put a bubble on it and got it there. Okay, now that being said, we'll take a little tour down to the Sea of Cortez. And I just defined it so you knew what it was. And Sea of Cortez, of course, is that armpit of Baja, California. And my son, who was working in LA, and he's just finished up working in LA, would take off and had a place he rented down in the Sea Cortez, down and about right here. And so we went down one Christmas to get away from the cold of Montana, and it was cold down there. It was so interesting. But he said, Dad, when you come down here, this is the weirdest place. When it's high tide, the ocean's right at shore like you would normally be. When it goes to low tide, you can walk straight out on a flat plain for 1 mile before you hit the water edge. He says, the weirdest thing in the world. I told that to a friend of mine who lived down there, and he said, yeah, I had a boat, and I brought it in and unloaded it on high tide, and then was going to go out in a couple hours, and it was beached and laying over on its side, and had to wait for high tide. This is what it looks like. And it goes for 1 mile out there, and you will find starfish and all sorts of things, and you can tear that all up, and when the water comes in and goes out again, it makes new ones. And what are those? Water ripples. You see them in the bottom of a stream, right? You've seen them? Well, the other thing that Pardee saw, not only the lines on the mountain above Missoula, but he saw these. And these are called giant water ripples. And so I had to, this is why I bought a drone, because I've got Michael Ord's book back there in Glacial Lake Missoula, and his pictures aren't bad, but they aren't great. And I've told this to Mike. I said, Mike, those aren't great pictures. Well, the drone shows you what it is. Now, we're going to get to a place where you're going to be able to see shortly the water ripples from ground level. And there they are. Isn't that impressive? Well, first off, notice those trees. We'll come back to them. There's the water ripples. That looks like nothing, right? That doesn't look like anything spectacular. Well, those are 45-foot high water ripples. You could build a 4-story building on one, in the bottom of one, and not see from the bottom of the other. And here's what they look like as I flew the drone up on them. And this is when the dam burst at the Montana-Idaho line. The water's rushing out, and it left water ripples 45 feet high on there. And you can see the water's coming straight down, perpendicular, and there's the trees. We were up in the other direction before. We were up there where that water is going this direction, and this water is going this way. It parts up there. And you can see there's those trees again. The last shot was there. This shot is here, and you can see they're going at different angles, and I'll show you that better in just a second. There you go. You can see the 2 different angles of that, and you can tell that by the angle of the water. So that was a big learning curve from these water ripples. Okay, so what happened during the Ice Age? Which one is that, Doc? The first, second, third, fourth, fifth? the ice age. And many of you know that, right? Okay, a lobe of ice came down here. This is the Idaho-Montana line, right along that edge. And it slammed into the mountain there and blocked off the water. And it was over 25 feet high, the glacial ice. And so the water backed up to a depth of 2,000 feet. The distance across the dam was 23 miles. And so it was a huge lake, and it filled up all of western Montana. I lived right about there, and we were under 650 feet of water. But at the border, right there at the dam, it was 2,000 feet deep. When that thing burst, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. Now, so what did Pardee see? He saw the water ripples, and he saw the strand lines on the mountain. So he knew there was a lake here, and he knew it catastrophically burst. And so this is what happened. This is from National Park Service, and there again is where the ice dam was on the Idaho-Montana line, and the arrows show what happened. When it burst, folks, it was 2,000 feet deep. By the time it hit Spokane, it was still 800-foot high tidal wave. Can you imagine seeing an 800-foot wall of water coming at you? Yeah, you probably couldn't stand up. It would knock you over. And then by the time it spread out, it was still about 300 feet deep as it spread across the state. And it did that for 3 days. There is Palouse Falls, where I showed you that canyon and the falls. And that's the Wallula Gap. We'll fly that in a little bit. And what happened at Wallula, there's a gap, and this gap was so narrow that the water was coming so fast it backed up and made a temporary lake, and they called it Lake Lewis. They just gave it a name. It was only there for about 5 days. But that gap was 1.2 miles wide. That shows you the intensity of water that's coming through there. And then it finally went to Portland area, but it couldn't get out the Portland inlet, so it backed up the Willamette Valley all the way to Eugene, Oregon, and carried icebergs full of Montana rocks that when the icebergs got dropped there, left Montana rocks scattered all over the fields in the Willamette Valley. And they call them erratics. Okay, so I went out there, and this is not far from Spokane, 30 miles out, and I filmed this. These little bumps, if you will, they look like little buttes, are about 75 feet high. They don't look that big, but that trail, if you're standing here, they're bigger than you think they are. And notice you can see the water trails here, and the top of that's flat. Also notice that it's got a sheer cliff that drops straight down, and then there's kind of a shoulder that comes out at varying lengths, about 45-degree angles, sometimes 30-degree angle. And these have water channels where water was trying to get through, but then the main water, as this is going lower, went around these and left them behind, didn't wash them away. So that is the typical, and this is the scablands of Washington State. It's what they call it scablands because it's like a scab that won't heal. It looks like somebody's arm or something that got scabbed up. And so you see those standard dimensions: flat top, 90-degree angle drop, and a shoulder of about 30 to 45 degrees. Flying across here, you see another one of those little features, but coming up is another strange feature of the scablands. And they call them, there's water channels, you can identify them, that's important. But also, now coming up, look at this shape of this lake. These are called pothole lakes. They're the shape of an egg. They're fairly round. The border of the bank as you walk down in them are about 45-degree angle. It's like somebody took a router bit around that thing and routed it so it's 45-degree angle. And these are all over the place, and there's the scablands. That was all flooded by Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. And that's what it looks like, and that's land for sheep, and that's about it. Okay, so here are some of the features we have, these little buttes, and we now can see that floods will give us a flat top, they'll give us a sheer cliff, they'll give us a shoulder. We can see water channels finding their way through. Some of them, these will be pointing the direction of flow. They're elongated and pointing the direction the water's flowing, and then you have water channels on either side. Okay, then we have pothole lakes, and they have this kind of egg shape, but they vary greatly. They'll be all different shapes, but they have a rounded nature to them, and they have that 45-degree angle bank right there. So it has an angle to it. And this is caused by turbulent whirlpools. The whirlpools get spinning, and it cut those things out of sheer rock. And this is basalt, a fairly hard volcanic rock. All right, farther west now, there's the Columbia Gorge, and you can see the mountains off in the background starting to rise. The gorge, this is a flat bottom coulee. Notice the cliffs. These cliffs are at this level 400 feet down from top to bottom, and from the very top it's 600 feet down. And this is one of the things that J. Harlan Brett saw that he went out to see. And notice this thing kind of got left behind, an erosional remnant of some sort. I think I have my theories on why that's there. Because this is a hanging valley. A hanging valley. Now what's a hanging valley? Well, you can see that that was eroding down from Lake Missoula like that way, but then a bigger flow came by and cut that one off, and just it kept cutting, and it sucked the water right out of this one. And so that one didn't continue to erode and left a cliff. And the drainage is behind it, but it ends. It just ends at the cliff. It doesn't, if that had formed over millions of years, it would have kept eroding down to the bottom. But this happened by a flood and got cut off. Diagnostic of floods. Don't forget that, okay? And then out there in Washington, you can find all sorts of weird characters from Montana. Okay, so we find these flat bottom stream beds. Now, you know, it's not perfectly flat, but it's really quite flat. We see these shoulders, we see these cliffs, and then it's flat up on top. This one will be the same, almost the same elevation as straight across, because this got washed out cataclysmically, okay? All right, hanging canyons. You have that hanging canyon where the main stream cuts this smaller stream off. And so here's that flat country I was showing you, and then here is where the flood kind of gathered and cut this area cataclysmically. And you can see all the water channels, these lakes were formed by that, but watch as we go down, we're going to drop 600 feet, and these are plunge pools from waterfall coming over the top. And as we go across this, we're going to note, again, notice that 45-degree angle by this lake here, but there's also a water channel here, so this lake only fills to that level. It won't fill any higher, that will just drain out. And there's the water channels, you see that? And this is a spinning whirlpool, and it's spinning out, and it's just cutting the rock as it goes. And then it just goes over to the waterfall. And that one makes a nice little heart shape, but I don't know what the whirlpool did, but it's kind of cool. And you can see water channels though, with green. There's still a little bit of green, and we'll follow that water channel. And this again is solid basalt. So it's volcanic rock from Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens area. So that's what that looks like. Now, as we fly over this, notice off in the distance now, that's a big waterfall that made that plunge pool. And literally, the waterfall was going all the way out here and plunging and left this sandbar behind it. And that sandbar is about 90 feet high, and it's got that 45-degree angle too. Interesting. But this is the important thing. That is an erosional remnant or a butte left behind by this thing. And notice this ridge here. First off, there's a water channel cut through. This ridge looks like what? Like the spine of a dinosaur. You know, doesn't it? Kind of, or some kind of animal. And then that is of the same level. There, you're looking down on it. It kind of looks like a spine, doesn't it? Remember that. We'll come back to that when we get to Utah. In Utah. This is about 600 feet above the lake. So you can see at the very top of this is that high. And that's what it looks like. And you can see a lot of people have trails here when they walk around here, people trails throughout this area. And a lot of people hike it, but I rarely have seen people there, except on weekends. Okay, so that is, these are the planation surface we call it above. It's flat, it's been planed down. We have erosional remnants. This is a long one pointing the direction of flow. It's that guy. And it has that kind of spine on the back. We also have this big plunge pool, and we have a flat bottom creek. And the other thing we noticed was these vortex channels and these vortex lakes. And geologists will call it a calc, if you're familiar with that. All right, so that's what we see there, and these are caused by turbulent whirlpools, okay, cutting through there. All right, let's go to the Wallua Gap. I told you that. It's about 1.2 miles across. I'm flying across there. And I was flying that, and I noticed that little guy. You know, that looks like a little thumb, but it's big. Okay, you start to get the idea how big this is. This I call a tower. And a tower sitting on a cone-shaped geological structure. And we'll see the cones alone, or we'll see them with towers on them. But this one was cut cataclysmically by Lake Missoula Flood. We find these on the edge of the main channel. They won't be in the main channel, they'll be on the edge on either side. You'll find whirlpool lakes, you'll find these structures on the edge of those things. And notice how the top tower is kind of rounded. It's almost like a stovepipe stuck on top there. And you see the highway down, and that's where the water couldn't get through fast enough, so it had to back up. You see the angle, this is almost 60 degree on one side, and you see the water channels on either side of that. Okay? So we see cones and towers, they have this kind of a structure. And then they're caused by, I think they're caused by whirlpools too, but I'm not certain. And that is me to give you the size comparison. That's how big this country is. Okay? So what causes this? Planation surface. Remember when the dam burst? The water spread out? Now you have a 300-foot high wave of water coming, and it's turning like a blade on a planer, and it's just slicing it all down evenly. Now with floods, do they stay at the same level all the time? No, they go from high to low. In a burst dam, usually floods go up and they go down, right? But a burst dam, they start out high, or real close to high, and then they just go down. As the water spread out, it starts getting too thin, and it'll pull into channels, and it'll start cutting the channels. And so that's how that happens. So this is called the sheet flow phase, where it's planing everything flat. And so it's planing like you take a rough board, and you can do it that way, or you can put them in a planer, you know, and that's got spinning blades, and it makes them smooth. Okay, so that's what's happening to the landscape by that water that's churning and going across it. That's the planation surface from the sheet flow phase. But now as it starts to give us a channelize, all the water will pull into a channel, and if there's enough flow in that next channel down, it'll plane that flat. Do you see how that would be? And then it'll eventually run out of water, and that's exactly what happened. All right, we also see these erosional remnants. Now you can see how they got flat topped, right? Because they were planed during that first phase. The whole area was the same height. And then it channelized on either side of that and left that with a flat top. Did you always wonder how flat top buttes occurred? Did you always wonder how mesas are flat on top, out in the middle of nowhere? It's water. Massive flows of water. Pothole lakes, that's during the channelized phase, and generally speaking, it's on the edge. Not in the main channel, but right near the main channel. Okay? And those are turbulent whirlpool caused. All right, hanging canyons. So we have both canyons, both water flow directions channelizing, but then the one pulls water, and when you get water really pulling, it will actually pull it and stop the other one from getting water, and then keeps cutting down lower and lower, and left that one hanging where it cut only down a few hundred feet. Okay, so that's the Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. And we're going to stop there for just a second. If you have some questions, we'll take them. And I'll get the next one ready. I hope I didn't turn off oh, I didn't, I did it right. Good deal. Okay, any questions? Now, we'll have time at the end, so we got 2 more little sections to do. Are you ready? Yeah, question.
You said this was after the Ice Age, Do you have a rough time frame after Noah's flood when the ice built up and then this broke through?
Sure. Great question. So Michael Ord's done a lot of work on all of this. So I'm just a copycat with a drone, okay? So Mike's a good friend of mine, and he taught me a lot of what you're learning. But I'm teaching him some things too now with the drone. But, all right, so Noah's flood, 4,500 years ago, and the Ice Age started in that right away. Probably it started getting close to that because the conditions of the world were such. with the volcanism, with the warmer oceans. So it's starting to develop in the first 500 years. Probably this was around 3700 BC, 3700, I don't know, 2700. Well, what is the date now? It'd be 3,700 years, yeah, ago. So drop 2,000 off of that, so 2,700. No, 1,700. Yeah, 1,700. There we go. That was bothering me. So this ice age was ending after Abraham. It was ending after Abraham. And that's why you look at, you hear the stories about Israel, the land of flowing with milk and honey, and you look at Israel now, or actually that whole area, it's desert. Well, during the Ice Age, there was a lot more moisture in that area, and it was a different climate completely. And we watched that climate change over the next couple thousand years. Okay, that's a great question. Okay? All right, and don't forget, Doc Horton is not a geologist. Doc Horton stuck his hands up the backside of cows. So I always temper that with what I do, all right? Just got to take it for what it is, all right? Okay, so this is from Tass Walker, and he looked at Genesis and then kind of graphed out how he felt from how he saw the flood developing and how then it diminishes. So at day 150 was where it hit the peak. And so that means that the waters are rising across the surface of the earth. Here it hits the peak, and then the mountains are going to start coming up under the ocean, and most of the sheet flow phase is under the ocean. So the water's sheeting off, because that's displacing water as it's flowing off. And we'll come to that a little more in a bit. And then eventually we get to the end where it dries up. So during this first 150 days, that's the destruction phase. All the layers of the Grand Canyon are laid down then, or most of them. Most of them. Some of them will come in the end afterwards. So the first 40 to 60 days, everything is being destroyed. And Tim Clary has worked this out, the geologist from ICR, by oil well logs, how there were surges coming in farther and farther and farther onto the continents. And it's killing off an ecosystem, and then it's getting higher, and it's killing off that ecosystem, and then it's going higher, and it finally gets to the top ecosystem, and it's the keel of the boat, 25 feet above the highest land point. So that's where that's happening in those first days. The next days is where the layers are it's being destroyed. Now the layers are being laid down. More and more are being laid down through that period of time. And then we get to this stage. Now we're into the sheet flow phase, where the mountains are rising up and the ocean basins are sinking down, and it's drawing water off the mountains. And that is when it's sheeting down and planing the surfaces. And the mountains, remember, would have all this sediment on top of it. 2 miles of sediment on top of it. Do most of our mountains have sediment on top? No, they have granite, which is an igneous rock. That's base rock. And so all of that gets washed off before it even hits the surface. There are a few places where there are some sedimentary rock, like on the top of Mount Everest. There's sediment from the flood, still there with fossils. And I'll show you some of those, not at Everest, but around here. Okay? And so the sheet flow phase is planing down, and it's leaving surfaces like this. This is above the Madison River area near Bozeman, Montana. And buttes, this is from Dickinson, North Dakota. Buttes, the top of them are cut down during that time, during the sheet flow phase, and that's right here on the Noah flood, as the mountains are rising up. Okay, then it starts to go to channelize, and now we're going to start cutting canyons, we're going to start cutting plunge pools, we're going to get erosional remnants left behind, those will be buttes, and you're going to get potholes cut. Have you ever seen potholes here in this state? Well, not on the road. I'm talking about the ones cut circular like that. Have you ever seen those? Well, there's more here than you know. Okay, so let's go back to the channelized phase. Remember now in this latter stage, we're going to get it, we already have this layer out there. It starts to channelize, and it'll plane another one, and it'll plane it flat. Now this is from Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. This is near Ritzville, Washington. Okay, the water volume drops, it begins to cut channels, and so that's what we've seen, and then that's channelized stage is the last stage. In the flood of Noah, though, that channelized stage goes more and more and more, much longer than the Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. All right, so Glacial Lake Missoula Flood goes to the Pacific, starting about here in Montana, goes this way. So I'm going to show you videos that are not Glacial Lake Missoula Flood, that are from everywhere else. All right, so we're going to look at planation surfaces first and flat bottom creek beds. So, anybody know where Chugwater Creek, Wyoming is?
Chugwater?
Yeah. So, you know, it's interesting. I say that most of the places I go, nobody knows. But here, people know it because you're close enough. All right? Look at what you're seeing now. What do you see? You see the flat tops? Do you see the cliffs? Do you see the water channels? What's coming into view right now? What are those? Water ripples. I thought they were, then I thought they weren't, and now I'm convinced they are. And they're at the right distance. They're on the edge of the main channel. Do you see that? Now, did Chugwater Creek cut this valley? No. The flood did, and Chugwater Creek just meanders down in what was already cut, and it's fairly flat. Look at those dimensions again. You see the same dimensions everywhere, all across this area. As we go across to the other side, it's even more channeled. In a very intricate channelization, and then you hit a flat plain that goes flat all the way to LaGrange, where the Bible school is, Frontier School of the Bible, right on the edge of Wyoming and Nebraska. Okay, you see that flat plain? That goes all the way out to Nebraska, just about. And that is evidence of Noah's flood. And why? Because where's the water from? This is at 6,000 feet. There's no big lakes above that. Okay, so we have a flat bottom creek with steep cliffs, just like what we saw in Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. Where did the water come from for this? That volume of water is a lot of water. And we see the planation surface above, all across there, just like we saw in Lake Missoula. Now let's look at erosional remnants. This is from Lake Missoula. That's that big one that I showed you pointing in the direction of flow. I'm going to take you here. How many know where Lincoln, Montana is? Or anybody heard of it? Ever heard of Ted Kaczynski? Ever heard of the Unabomber? Yeah, Lincoln, Montana. Okay, and they would like you to forget that, and you have, so it's working. But Lincoln is just about 20 miles to the west here, and you go from Lincoln up over the pass and you drop down, and here is a butte out in the plains. And this butte is called Crown Butte. Do you notice it's weird looking? That's because it's volcanic rock that's called a sill butte. You had a volcano start to come up and it went under the soft layers. And then it cooled, and then the flood came and washed it and left the top. But what do you see? Is this top flat? What are you seeing? Water channels. And in fact, the water channels are too big at the end. It's like they continued way out there. They are a hanging canyon. But there's also water channels on the edge of this. We're going to see some as we come along here. There are some water channels that come down here, and the top of the butte flows away from that. The water wouldn't roll over the top. It's going the other direction. So how did those form? That had to be when those channels up on top were overfilling and going the other way. So how did those water channels, those are big channels. People go up there and walk all the time, nobody sees it. You have to get above it to see them. And they're well developed. And notice how they project out in the air. I call it the bottom of a U. You think about it as you draw a U. You go straight down, then you kind of make this curve and to back up, cut off all that straight level, and you have this shape. And that's what you see, and that's diagnostic of a hanging canyon or hanging valley. We'll see that shortly. All right, so how do those form? Well, is that going to play? It might not have loaded. I don't think it did. We'll skip it. Is that one going to play? I didn't. Oh, there we go. Go. This is in Glacier Park, and why I filmed this is, what do you see happening here? Can you see that? And now this is a whirlpool that happened there, and this is the shape. Once you start getting used to that shape, that's a shape by water swirling. You can see another one forming right there, and it's churning away, and it does that every year. And this is about midsummer, Avalanche Creek. And so that's an example of that. Okay, so that made me start to think. See, here's the problem, is these channels are flowing to the west. And the water coming off the mountains is flowing from the west to the east. So I said to myself, now wait a minute, if those water channels were caused by Noah's flood and the mountains rising up, then those channels should be flowing west to east. But they're flowing east to west back to the mountains. And I was driving out to a Bible camp to teach out in Lewistown, Montana, and I'm driving and I'm thinking, how in the world, why are the water, wait a minute, water's coming back. Wait a minute, has anybody canoed a river and found an eddy? Yeah, if you canoe a river, if you've ever canoed a river, back in the old metal canoes, before we had kayaks, and you run the canoe into the bank in a fast flowing stream, what happens? The back end is still out there and it swings you right around, and generally speaking, you're drawing everything out shortly thereafter. But an eddy is kind of nice because the water goes backwards and slows down. And so if you can find an eddy back, that's the place to land the canoe because it'll just slow you down and you can just slide in. Well, I was thinking, now wait a minute, this is a massive stream coming off the Rocky Mountains rising, and it's cutting everything away, and what if the water is eddying back because there's a rock in the middle of the way, and so the water parts, goes around it, and comes back. And I think that's what actually happened here. And the water goes like that, and that's how they're going the wrong direction. That's my proposal. A little farther away near the city of Cascade, Montana, we see another butte with those kind of channels up on top. And look at them from the side. I told you about the bottom of the U? There it is. That's a hanging valley. That thing was much longer out there, and that got cut off as water came by from the rising Rocky Mountains and left that as a hanging valley. Only instead of the top end being left behind, the bottom end was left behind just because of the way the channels came. So we see those there. Okay, now I'm going to take you up to the Beartooths. Now remember, as the mountains rose up, they were full of sediment. And all that sediment's getting washed off as they're coming up, and it's getting washed off, and so it's left with base granites that are there. The Beartooths are all granite rock, except for one spot. Now first off, back up. I was going to try and push this button. Here's the Beartooth Highway. Anybody been on that? It's really, you got to do that. Put it on your bucket list. That is something else. But look at the top of the Beartooths. Do you see that? It's almost like a butte. It's like a butte. In fact, that's, I think, how it got the name, the Beartooths. Okay, so we're going to fly that. It's illegal to fly your drone from inside a wilderness area. But I'm doing it because I'm outside the wilderness area flying in. So I got a good drone that'll fly 5 miles, so I can go into the wilderness and take these kind of pictures looking at the Beartooths. It's just a gorgeous area. But it's like a lot of the areas in Colorado. They're very high and not a lot of trees. You're above the tree line in a lot of this. So there's 10,000 feet as a general rule up there. And a lot of glacial effect and scrapings on all this granite. And it's all granite. Solid granite. And I think that's how it got named the Beartooths. See how flat topped it is? That was plain flat, and then it kind of channelized around it. Now Beartooth Butte is something to look at. That is sedimentary rock left behind. That is an erosional remnant. And look at how it looks. It's water, you can see literally water is parting and going on either side. Can you see that? That was left behind as water is rushing off that plateau. The top of that is right at 10,000 feet. So where did the water come? There's nothing above that. The Beartooths are just little ridges, 12,000 feet. And there's no water up there to leave this beyond. This was cut by water. And you can see it from the drone. And what are you seeing? You're seeing the same angles as before. There's fossils in that rock. That's from the flood of Noah. And this is probably one of the best evidences of the flood of Noah, is the Beartooths. And you'll see at the very top of it, it's quite flat up there. Do you see that? And there's even these little towers that you'll see, and here's another one here that you can see on the Beartooths. Okay, so it's called Beartooth on this side and Clay Butte on this side. It's the same structure. Strong evidence of water rushing off the rising Beartooth Range. They're 10,000 feet. We have massive water erosion leaving behind fossil-containing sedimentary rock. How did that happen over millions of years? How did that get up there? Why is it there? Where did the water come from at that elevation? Where did it come from? Now, Psalm 104, I've looked at this carefully. It's quoted by a lot of creationists, and I believe it contextually is absolutely right. This is speaking of the flood of Noah and the draining of the flood of Noah. So what's it say were the factors that caused the water to get off the earth? The mountains rose. So that's part of it. But the second thing, the valleys sank. What valleys? That's the ocean floor sinking down as the valleys, mountains are rising up. That's rushing the water. It's literally sucking the water off the continent. And that's how it dried out the earth. Okay, now this is quite a story to get here. I won't have time to tell you about. This is Factory Butte, and the arrows are pointing the wrong direction. I couldn't believe I did that. So just ignore the arrows, and the water's going the other way. How do I know? Well, there's the mountains right there, okay? That's where they're coming from. Look at this thing. It's 1,600 feet from bottom to top. It's an anomaly out there. It looks like some kind of factory sitting out there in the plains. And water's going the other way, dummy. It was a bad day. I rode it the wrong way. Anyways, but look at the top of that. And you remember this one? This is Lake Missoula. Look at this one. Same structure. This one's 600 feet high. This is 1,600 feet high from top to bottom. This is monstrous. Monstrous. See that flying along there? And it's flat on top. We'll fly on this. Look it down on that. Same thing. Same thing. Just to tell you about my drone, I held on one day when I was out there to get out there and take this video. It was a 600-mile trip, 400-mile trip. And the winds are going at steady 25 miles an hour and gusting to 40. And I took that video while it was gusting to 40 miles an hour. That's a good drone, huh? That is an astonishing photography drone. And the dust was blowing in my face. I could hardly see what I was controlling. But you compare Glacial Lake Missoula Flood, and this one is sitting out in the desert 1,000 feet higher. The same thing. Same thing. That's Factory Butte. Okay, now I have to take you to near St. George, Utah, Hurricane Mesa. This one's kind of cool. Nice flat top. You see that? It's so flat, they built a railroad track right on top of it. Why did they do that? Well, they've hooked railroad cars onto it and shot them at hypersonic speeds and shot them off of there with monkeys attached. It's so fun to watch everybody go, huh? What? Yes, it's true. It's true history. And I didn't know if they'd shoot my drone down because I didn't know if they're still active. And by the way, there's other buttes up there. You still want to hear the rest of that story? Yeah. They were developing aircraft fighter jet ejection seats. And so these monkeys, I'm sure some of them died, but they saved thousands of pilots' lives. So, yeah. But as I was flying back down, what do I see? This is, first people say water ripples, it's not. It's dropping water levels. You remember on Lake Missoula, the marks on the side of the mountain? This is similar marks, but this is the water going down, and it gives us layers as they're dropping. And they're semi-flat, but they're tipping a little bit towards the decreasing water flow. And this goes the same level all the way around the butte. That is dropping water levels. And it's evidence that this whole area was completely inundated with water. Dropping water levels, evidence of massive flooding event. Okay, how's our time? Let's stop there.
We've got plenty left.
Do we? Okay, you want some more? I got a few more things and then I'll take you on to the finale. All right, well, okay, this is the farthest east section of the Rocky Mountain Range. What is it? The green. And when you figure that out, then you can figure out what the white is. Farthest east portion of the Rockies. If you go straight north from here, it's going to be east of you. Black Hills of South Dakota. Okay? There's Rapid City. The Black Hills are, Mount Rushmore, somewhere in there. And what is this then? Badlands of South Dakota. Notice it's on the side away from the Rocky Mountains, the rest of the Rocky Mountains above it. And this is what it looks like. I lived in North Dakota. I went in the Badlands of North Dakota, and they look like canyon lands. This is weird. It's like somebody dropped mud on a flat plain and then just carved it up. And just look at that. It's just like the weirdest moonscape you ever see. I mean, I just found it really weird. And I had to talk to geologists to help me explain, what are we seeing here? And what happened is, they don't know, but some of the dirt that came off the Rocky Mountains and off the top of the rising Black Hills slowed down and dropped the mud here. And I think I know why. But this is all the mud, and then carved it up as the water channelized. And so that is what we see there. Okay, look at it now. What do you see now? You see a flat surface? That's a planation level. And then it drops down to a lower level and planes that down. This is where you tee off. You have a huge sand trap, and there's your hole right over there. Okay, so those of you who golf, this is perfect for you. Head out to the down to the Badlands of South Dakota. Weird place, but look how flat that is. It is kind of eerie. It's so other-earthly. It's just a weird place. Look at that spine of a dinosaur left behind there. And we have a flat top here. And as we tilt up the camera, you're going to see that this whole area has been plain flat and left this behind as an erosional remnant. Are you seeing a picture of sort of how that's happening as the water level is dropping? And there's the plain that was later cut. Okay, water ripples. Do we see any water ripples? Well, look what's below it. What is that? Where? Black Hills? Badlands? Sand Hills of Nebraska. They don't know how the sand got there. But I look at it and I say, well, I see water ripples. They say, no, that's wind. Anybody had taken a four-wheeler on sand hills and stuff, and you know that you can go flying up this hill, and then you hit a peak, and what do you have? Yeah! Because it drops about 30 to 35 degrees straight down, and you'll get killed, so you have to go up those carefully. These, the steepest, is about 24 degrees. That's typical of water. Wind leaves them at 30 to 35 degree angles. So this is very clearly water ripples. That's the direction of water flow, perpendicular to them. You see that? But notice that one comes at a little angle. And then down there, it's another angle. And if you extrapolate back, what's between these two? Oh, the Black Hills. Water's going around the Black Hills. See that? Okay? So water ripples. This is Glacial Lake Missoula from Google Earth. There's the sand hills of Nebraska from Google Earth. Glacial Lake Missoula, from Google Earth, and there is Sea Cortez. Water ripples. Water ripples. Now how did that happen? Well, here's what I think, I think you see the Black Hills, the water's coming down like this, and it's going around this, and it's eddying back. Oh, whoa. Oops. Okay, wow, okay. Back up, pay no attention to the guy there. How you doing on your live feed? You doing better than me?
Now, but earlier I looked like that, so.
Okay, well I gotta find out where I'm at. Okay, I'm right in here. Okay, we'll start there and move forward. Okay, so anyways, let me get past that. There's the water ripples, we've been through that. All right, so this picture, this is Google Earth going farther back. Here's the Black Hills. So water's coming off the Rockies, we have the Bighorn Mountains all rising up, and it's going this way and this way. Well, when you have water rushing past, it'll eddy back. And I believe what happened is it eddied back and it slows down, it drops this dust here, and it drops the sandhills of Nebraska there. So smaller particles made it in, and it slowed down right here, and then eventually water came around and cut that. And that's how that happened. That's my thoughts on that. Okay, pothole lakes. Now I'm going to take you, I know you're still digesting that, but we have time for restraint. So here's a 700-foot high cliffs. These are monstrous. Look what I saw looking down. What do you see now? This is a mesa out in the desert in Utah. And up on top, and it was spring, so I saw it. I don't think I would have seen them, but I saw them because they had water in them from snow. And these are definitely turbulent whirlpools on a mesa 700 feet above the dry desert, flat desert floor. And there on the edge of the main flow, what do we find? Turbulent whirlpools. And you can start to see now that shape that we saw in Glacier Park, that from water, turbulent whirlpools 700 feet above the desert floor in Utah. And that reminds me, by the way, once I saw these, I went back out to Glacial Lake Missoula Flood area on that big erosional remnant, and look what I found on top. I didn't see them before. I didn't know to look. And I found them out there. Same sort of thing as what we found here. Okay, cones and towers. Well, you've seen this, right? Most of you have seen this over in Nebraska. Chimney Rock, just across the line in Nebraska. And this, by the way, took 5 million years to form. Okay? And notice the shape of it. It's a tower on a cone. You see that? Same shape. Look at the top of that. You see the cracks in the sandstone? Boy, it's doing well for 5 million years, you know, in formation. Look at that top. It is cracking apart. I renamed it Clock Tower because it's a ticking clock telling us their dates are totally wrong. This thing will never last. This picture is 150 years ago. It was 30 feet higher in 150 years. Wow, it's really started to erode in the last 4.9 million years. It really took off. See the cracks? That thing is not that old. Okay, Utah. This is just a beautiful rock, isn't it? Look at that sandstone. You see flood surges, uplifts happening. It is astonishing. Up on top of this ridge, a couple hundred feet above the bottom of the desert, I found cone shapes. Here, 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 but then look at this. It's a cone field. And this is just outside of Zion Park. Just outside. I can't fly my drone inside. So I'm telling you, it's outside. It is. Look at that cone field. How did that get up on top? What did I say? Where do you find these things? On the edge of a main flow. And that's where the whirlpools start. And this must have been just Whirlpool City up there. This must have been just like wild. And it looks like somebody stacked coins on top of it. And so I'm starting to think this is made by whirlpools. But I do not know that for certain until I flew a little farther over. I was still looking at these cones saying, wow, these are amazing. And then I saw that. And again, it was the right time of year because there's water in it. And I spotted it. And then I said, yes, now I know that turbulent whirlpools are causing these cones. And you can see actually tracks where the whirlpool goes up and gives us that rounded nature. Rounded nature. The angular nature of that. And we see cones, and we see that. Aha! Now we know it's turbulent whirlpools. Okay, all right. Whew. You ready for your final test? And then there's a bonus if you can handle it. Okay, final test. Delicate arch, I think it's 52 feet high. And what do you see? Yeah, look at that. It's like nobody sees it. You have to walk around it because it'll drag you right down the bottom. And that is a turbulent whirlpool. And it's on the top of a ridge. Now when we get, and you see that, and you also see it drains out. See it cut out and it drained out so that never fills to make a lake so people don't notice it. Where that lady is standing, you do not walk 4 feet the other direction. It drops sheers about 600 to 700 feet. So this is on top of a ridge, main flow going by, and that's where this massive whirlpool forms. And then left that, I think it's nicking this thing and cut that hole through it. That's my thought. And what do you see there? Cone. But watch as I turn around. Now we see that huge whirlpool-caused structure that everybody has to walk around, you know, so you don't fall into it. And as I go up, it's a cone field all up on top of there. We look back down, you can see a little bit of the cliff and how far down it is to the bottom. And you notice those kids aren't going over any farther than that. Nobody goes much farther than that lady standing because you fall off the edge. And that thing is 52 feet high. I took a picture looking backwards, and there is the delicate arch. What's that? That's the whirlpool. And that's a cone field up on top. All right? Now, you've seen this picture before, or ones like it of Monument Valley? Now that you've been trained, what do you see? You see them all? You see the cliffs, you see the flat bottom valley, you see another erosional remnant, and you see that little guy. Remember there's the flat bottom from Lake Missoula? There's an erosional remnant like those guys, flat on top, only those are like 1,000 feet high. And then you see that guy? I blew it up a little bit, and you remember that one from Lake Missoula? That and that. Where did all that dirt go, by the way? Where did all that dirt, let me go back to that. Where did all of that dirt go? Sea of Cortez, that's where the river ends. That is what happened in the Sea of Cortez. That's why there's all that dirt there. That all washed out to the Sea of Cortez. You know, in the armpit of the Sea of Cortez, you can literally walk straight across there. It's about 40 miles from one side to the other on low tide, if you're really fast, okay? But you could do it. That's for all the dirt that was here. It's all gone there. BioLogos says the scientific and historical evidence is now clear, folks. There never was a global flood. We know that. Science tells us. I have other words. No way. Okay, that is a breaking point. I can put one more if you're up to it, and it's kind of the finale if you want it.
We're up to it.
Are you sure? Okay.
Yes.
My computer just rebooted for some reason, but
No.
it won't take that long. Okay, there we go. All right. We're done with that one. You're up to it. Okay, this is the fun one. I like this one the most. And I think you should too, because it's the Colorado River. It's your state river, right? There we go. Okay. And I try to block out some slides. So we're going to ask the question, how did the Grand Canyon get there? Okay, now we've been told it's how it's done, and I'll take you over there and show you that. All right, forget that. We've already gone through this. Well, let's do this. This blue section is the layers being laid down. Tim Clary from the Institute for Creation Research, geologist, he wrote a book called Carved in Stone, and he deals with how all of those layers got laid down. If you've not read that book, it's not too hard of a read, and it'll explain a lot. And then I deal with this part, and I'm writing this into a book, and it should be published by next spring from ICR, so you can get it there. And so we'll just go through this. I didn't mean to leave all that. Oh, this stayed in. Oh, okay, we're going to go through. Quick. We know all this stuff. I went too fast. Come on. So this is from the thing that I did, okay, in Missouri. Okay, this is all review, so I did hide it, but for some reason it's still here. The water ripples, get out of that. Okay, here we go. Now in May, I had to go back out, and so I went back out, made a trip through Utah, and then I went to Grand Canyon, and I want to hear what they said, how this canyon got here. So there, I'm going to take this is from May this year, and here I'll just read this to you. In 1861, the first geologist to visit the canyon, John Strong Newberry, concluded the Colorado River had cut the canyon. His finding holds today. Okay, the river cut it. There we go. I didn't know that, but now, here's the next part though. Why did the river turn and slice through the plateau? Now that's the one that geologists are working on. Now let me interpret that for you, because it's a plateau that's like this, right? It's tipping down. The Colorado River cuts right through the middle. Why didn't it just go around if it was millions of years? Well, you see, I want to interpret this for you. What they're saying there, that John figured out, is the river flowed uphill and back down for a couple million years to cut that. Because otherwise it would have just flowed around that. So really, really, is this sign rational? That's a question I have for you. Now, let's be fair. So let's look at the creationist global flood view. Is our view, my view, inferior to the national park's geology team's sign? Is it equal? Well, they're on equal footing. Or is it superior to our national park's point of view? That's worth asking. So if our view is superior, our first clue would be receding water levels. Okay? Remember them? Okay? Now look here in Canyonlands National Park, which is the Colorado River flow area. Do you see what I see? One level, another level, and much, much, much more levels all the way down. We're seeing dropping water levels. Here's another picture closer to Moab, Utah. Dropping water, and they're level, by the way. They go all the way around, just like they did at Hurricane Butte. And then a tower on the ridge. Isn't that interesting? And then we have the standard dimensions with a flat top, and that flat top is the same as across the Colorado River. By the way, that's the Colorado River right there. All right, so now we're at the Grand Canyon. What do you see now? Look at it. Do you see it a little differently now? Do you see that flat top is the same as that flat top? It's tipping down a little bit, just like we saw at Hurricane. And this carries on all the way up this canyon. It's tipping down, and then it gathers and cuts down to another level. And in fact, as we tip back, we can see that above this level, there's more levels. There's one here, here. It goes all the way across. And a couple of this level is all the same, and so on. We have evidence of dropping water levels in the Grand Canyon. So that shouldn't happen over millions of years. So if the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon were cut by a flood, we should see evidence of dropping water levels, and we do. There they are. So that's one in our favor. All right, how about turbulent whirlpools in the Colorado River drainage? Okay. And remember, just like what we saw there, this is my $1,200 video. You can ask me about that later. Okay? And it's this arch. Now here's the arch right there. And I droned over it. What do you see? What cut the arch? Look at, there's two of them. And that one didn't break out, so it has trees growing in it, brush growing in it. This is called picture frame arch because it broke out. You can see some of the rocks that have broken out. But this is inside the arch. Look at that round nature of whirlpool. And there's one layer of whirlpool and another one above it where it's cutting and circulating just like an egg shape. This one is above the city of Moab, about 40 miles southwest of Moab, about 1,200 feet above the Colorado River on a flat desert plain. And there we see turbulent whirlpools on the top of a rock sitting out there in the middle of nowhere. Those are turbulent. How else did those form? How did those form? Up top there, and you can see the desert is flat around it, and it's desert. Now as I go up, I'm going to show you more of the rock, because I think I counted 12 different turbulent whirlpool drillings of various sizes in this rock. You can see my truck is right there, another truck there. $1,200 was spent because of a rock right there. We'll go into that another day. But that's the repair on my truck. Okay. So that's another story. What do we see as we move along this rock? You see them here, even here. There's a little bit of one there, two little guys there. And we move here. There's another one, little thing there. I mean, you can make so that maybe those aren't, but that is. And then what do we have here? This is called balcony arch. This one didn't cut all the way down. And there's another one there, maybe there and there. So here's balcony arch going out from it. And you can see this is whirlpool cut, and then it somehow broke through and cut the hole out. And probably water came shooting out of that thing. That's probably why it's cut like that. But how else are those formed? That is turbulent whirlpools. In the middle of the desert, 1,200 feet above the Colorado River, about 20 miles from the river, up on a flat plain. And as I zoom out, I'm going to go up above, you're going to get a picture of this thing and see how big it is. And by the way, that's where I should have parked, not over the other side. Oh well. Explorations has their costs. And now I'm going to take you up above it, and you see it. There's the different arches. Notice, do you see something else that tells us water flow? Do you see that? Do you see it there? Also evidence of water flow going by. Look how flat that is. Look how flat that is.
How high is the drone then?
Good question. Yeah, it's up there. I couldn't see it anymore, I know that. So it was up there a bit. I suppose that's got to be about 100 feet high, that rock. And I probably was up maybe 400 from the ground. Okay, if the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon were cut by a flood, we should expect to see massive turbulent producing kalk formations somewhere along that, and at distances from the edge of the main flow, and guess what? We do see them, okay? How about cones and towers? Do we see cones and towers along the Colorado River drainage? Oh my goodness, they're everywhere. There they are. And of course there's all these other dropping watermarks. This one is out in the middle of nowhere, near Monticello, and Canyonlands Park is way out there. And look at that thing. And we can see also, we see flat plains of dropping water levels. And this thing is elongated the direction of the flow, much like Lake Missoula Flood with a tower on top. All right? And Palouse Falls, remember we saw that guy, right? All right, and it had those little spicules on top. It's narrow, but what I didn't show you is this is a side view of it. This is what it looks like in the side view. See the guy there? Right there? He was illegally droning that. You can't drone in there because it's a state park. You have to get a permit. And he was nervous when I saw that he was droning, but he was nice enough to give me the video, so I didn't say anything. So, so I do have his videos. But look at that rock. It's probably, given his size, it may be 2 feet, 3 feet wide, 2 feet, 3, and it's 25, 30 feet high. Here is the Fisher Towers, about half a mile from the Colorado River. And by the way, the signs there, we get a nice sign that says this, how these layers were formed, and then how did the towers form? Well, they tell us. Over thousands of years, the soft rock weathered down to the spectacular shapes visible today. So what is that saying to us? These towers are actively forming today. Really? Let's look at them. Fisher Towers, east of Moab, Utah, about 30 miles east up the Colorado River. And look at all the fine, this is where you really get a view of them. These are narrow, wide, and very tall, hundreds of feet high. People climb those things. I wouldn't do it. Soft rock like that. But look at how they're standing. Are these forming today? Can you figure out a way in which they're forming today? Look at that. And you can also see, do you see a little bit of that circular flow? See that angle? This is water coming down like this. Coming down like this during Noah's flood as this canyon is being cut. And this is on the edge of the main flow, which is going this direction, and these were left behind. Look how thin they are. And these are forming today. Give me a break. But they had to say that, because the other choice is they were formed during Noah's flood, and that wouldn't make sense. That is astonishing when you see that. Okay, can anybody conceive of a way in which these towers are forming today? I'm waiting to hear how that is actually happening. I can't see how you could even make an experiment to show that. What is the other possibility to explain? That it's flood remnant, just like we saw from Glacial Lake Missoula Flood. Okay, hanging valleys. This is another view of the hanging valley on top of Crown Butte near Lincoln, Montana. That's what they look like. And there's another picture of it, and you can see those dips, and that's really important. Get that into your brain, okay? Well, maybe I better back up. I better show you that. Let's play it. I'm going to show it again. Sorry, I messed you up, but
We're playing it.
you're playing it. Okay, well, I'm probably behind you. So, is that playing? There we go. Okay. And because I forgot, there's one point you need to see yet. So I'm going to move in closer, and here it is. When you look at that from the side view, do you see that corrugation? It's like a corrugated roof. That's from the channels that actually extended way out here, and then this all got cut off and left that hanging. And we have that shape there. So that's important for us to remember as we go into this next section. And we look at it here, you can see that corrugation real well now, right? Got that in your mind? Okay, that's important to see. Okay, now we can go on. There's Moab, Utah, and that's called Porcupine Ridge. It's 1,250 feet up to this, and what do I see on the top of the ridge? Can you see that? This isn't U-shaped, this is almost like a block U. And then there's a channel, water channel going on. It's left hanging, another one. Here it is. And it's well developed, and it got cut off by the water flowing this way. It was a changing water flow as the LaSalle Mountains to the southeast of the city changed the channel and cut this down to the Colorado River. You can see all of these hanging valleys. There's a nice one. Nice U-shaped hanging valley with a well-developed drainage going away from it. That is a hanging valley. And we can see them again here. Now this one just left a little bit of it here. And this is called Porcupine Ridge because this is all waterborne stuff as well. Up above there, it looks like little porcupines. Okay? So now I'm going to take you back to Fisher Towers. This is what I came to film. Fisher Towers are right here. Right here. All right? And above it, what did I see on Google Earth? You see it? But I couldn't fly up here because of FAA restrictions, but I was able to fly over here. So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go over there and fly that. And see now, from the drone, we can see this valley. I couldn't quite get into that one because of elevation. But this one has almost an L shape or V shape bottom, and I was able to fly into that one. So we're going to fly into it, which is hazardous for a lot of technical reasons, but I do it. And here we are inside of it, and we're flying, and I'm flying away from where we entered. And what do I see on the far end? Can you see the valley end? It ends right there, and it's cut off on that side too. This is hanging on both ends. Both ends are hanging because there's this valley, water was coming around here and cut this valley off here and turn around, and there's the parking lot down there, right there, and there is the final shape. This is hanging valley on both ends, absolutely caused by flood. The Colorado River didn't cut this, the flood cut it, and the Colorado River follows the flood pattern. Now, this is the eastern face edge of Grand Canyon. What do you see? Do you see him? I drove out there to get this picture. I had to get it. There's the little Colorado River there, and there are those hanging canyons right there. And you can see it's well developed. You can see the corrugated nature, just like we saw before. There it is again. You can see that corrugated nature. And what do we see in the background? A butte. There's a butte right out there, like crying out, hey, this is flood caused, and the whole land used to be up this high. And then the little Colorado River's coming in this way, Colorado River's coming this way. They hit together at the Grand Canyon. They meet together, and there is a butte left behind. So if these were cut by the flood, we'd expect to find hanging valleys from the changing water flows, and we do see them. By the way, that is diagnostic. The Colorado River did not cut that. That is diagnostic of flood. We just proved it's a flood. All right, why is that? Well, you have all the water from the Colorado River just funneling in here, and it hits right here at the same place all the water from the little Colorado River hits, and they hit together and cause a mess right at the plateau where the Grand Canyon cuts through. And so here's the Colorado River, little Colorado River. Where do they hit? Right where they converge, and that's where the canyon cuts. And we would expect to see at that point, to see massive whirlpools as the water's mixing, and we actually can see it right there. And I'll show you that. I'll show you a photo of that. We see that line, and that's one of the whirlpools coming back. And there it is. I flew my drone up here 3,000 feet, and then an airplane came right by me. I'm just like, because he came right over the ridge. And the reason why I flew there is because I could not fly on the other side of this road. I couldn't go this way, so I had to fly straight up here. And the reason why he flew right over my drone is because he was doing the same thing. And I'm just going, I can't see it, but I sure hope I don't see pieces come down. And fortunately, nothing happened. All right, so that is what this is, this line right here. And I think that's from the convergence, and that convergence made it start to cut through this ridge, where if it was millions of years, this water should have come like that. Should have just gone right around it, slowly cutting. And so, there we go. So my hypothesis, the Grand Canyon was cut rapidly by the converging flows running off the rising Rocky Mountains. And then this is, of course, Canyonlands. So we see all that evidence. I'm running out of time here. We've seen all of these evidences of that. Wow, okay. All right, so now the question is, here's the sign from the Grand Canyon, right? You've seen the evidence, right? So is this sign rational? Did the Colorado River cut this? So here's our three options. Is the Cretaceous global flood view inferior to the national park's position, equal to, or superior? It's the only rational. This is cut by flood. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. It's the only rational explanation. Now, I don't know if anybody's ever going to hear it. We're going to shout as much as we can. We're going to publish this through ICR. I hope it goes worldwide. Not for any glory or paybacks, just for God's glory, to show the flood is real. Changing flows of the Colorado River is what cut that thing. And the coming in as the Rocky Mountains are rising up, the oceans were drawing the water down, and it's rushing off like a mad, crazy mess. And that's how this cut. Thank you, everybody.
Well, wasn't that like one of the coolest things you've ever seen? All right, so let's have a question and answer time. So if you have a question, let me know. I will bring the mic to you. Don't say anything until you get the mic. And then we will try to work the mics so that they're not both on at the same time.
Okay.
So, does anybody have any questions?
Right over here, she raised her hand. Right behind. Yep.
So this evidence looks pretty clear. So when you present this to that organization that you were talking about at the beginning, with this evidence, why is there no results?
Okay. All right.
Turn your mic off when she's...
Was it okay if it left on? It seemed to work. No.
It's not okay.
Okay, it's not okay. So, all right, I'll turn it off next time. Okay, so I presented it to the Creation Research Society, and they always went, yay, you know. But the interesting thing is, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to a little community college, Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and I'm presenting it there. It'll be the first time in a secular college. So we'll see. Be praying for that. I just pray. There's a couple of professors. I'm being invited by a biology professor who's a believer, and she says many of my colleagues give me a hard time, and I'm hoping she can get her colleagues to come. So that'll be our first debut into the secular world. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, I've heard that there has been some people that have proposed that there was a giant lake after the flood, and that whatever dam was there broke, and then a huge torrent of water carved the canyon. Has that kind of gone by the wayside versus what you're presenting?
Okay, I turned it on too fast, but I'm getting better. Okay, I'm working on this. It's still active. I think they're totally wrong. What's interesting, now let me give you a little history on this. So I'm working with a guy in Nebraska, a physician down there, and we're talking, he saw this series, not the last section. That's all new. And as a result of this conversation I had with him, and he was telling me about that butte on the edge of the Little Grand Canyon, and I'm looking on Google Earth and I'm seeing the bottom of the U's. And I'm saying, I got to get out there and I got to see if that's real. So I look on the FAA and they won't let me fly there, period. Not alone the FAA and the Park Service, so I couldn't do it. But anyways, I made this proposal that is by that convergence of those two waters, and I looked at the watershed and thinking about the mountains rising up, and I sent it to Tim Clary at ICR, and I sent it to Michael Ord, who lives in Bozeman, Montana, has written 20-some books or something on this, and Tim Clary just kind of went, oh yeah, thank you, and Mike goes, well, yeah, I wrote up that about 10 years ago. I went, good heavens, Mike, I thought I was the first guy. And what he said, you approached it from a totally different view, and that really adds credence. Now, the other view, the trouble with it is there's no evidence of the lake lines. Do you remember what we saw in Lake Missoula? We saw water lines. There's no evidence of that. They're trying to find them. Well, I think what they're going to find is just dropping water levels, because that's going to be in that area. It's really not good evidence of that. And I'm convinced this is the way it is until somebody proves me wrong. But yeah, that's still out there. And at that same convention, I think there was a paper trying to advocate for that still. So it's still out there. Yeah, I think this is, well, of course I think it's right. So we'll see. Anybody else? I don't know what happened here. Oh, yeah.
I have two questions. The first being, just out of curiosity, since you research this stuff, what do you think caused the continental divide?
Okay, second question.
Second question is, do you know of any, or do you have any 3D topographical maps where we could look at with our own eyes a small scale of these things?
When you say continental divide, what do you mean by that?
I mean the divide that you can see in Wyoming, you can drive over, where half the water goes to California and half goes to here.
Okay, yeah. All right. Great question. Okay, so let me help you on that. Continental divide is simply by the rising Rockies. So as the rising Rockies go up, and I think about it in Montana, it's right at Butte, Montana, and that from there, it's high enough that all the water on the one side of it's going to go down into the watershed that flows into the Mississippi. And on the other side, it flows into the Clark Fork of the Columbia and flows to the Pacific, and it's just by the elevation. So that's what it is. And it's a good question, because it's from the rising Rockies. And so the reason why I think the Colorado River had such force is because of the shape of the Rockies in your state. So you have the Rocky Mountain front right here, that's the eastern edge, right? And so when the Rocky Mountain front is rising up, the water is shooting off to the east, and it's planing everything down. But it's spreading out because there's no other mountains there, so it just goes flat out there. And so you don't see a real torrent, a lot of ripped up area. On the west side of the Rockies, you have the Rocky Mountain front, you have the mountains along the Wyoming border, and then you have, I forget the name of them, but the mountains that go from east to west, right from the Rocky Mountain front. I think the San Juan Mountains by Durango. And so you have a bowl there that's just forcing the water in and shooting it towards Utah. And that's why that is so destructive, and that put twice the force to that area, because it didn't allow it to spread out. And it's the anatomy, basically, of the mountains here in Colorado that caused the Colorado River to have such a horrendous amount of erosion from that, where other areas not as much. And then you have the little Colorado River coming in right where it cuts through the plateau. So I think that's the cause of it. Okay, so it's by the rising of the Rockies that did that. Okay, the second question was?
Topographical maps.
Oh, okay, 3D. It's actually, we're working, we just hired we're working on hiring a map illustrator. And he works with AI and all that. And he's going to start making maps for us on this. And so that's literally my meeting's next Friday. So a week from today. And we'll be seeing if we can hire him to do that. Because this is kind of a big thing. Because we want to be able to give you a map when I'm talking about this stuff of where Lake Missoula goes. so you can follow it. And where we are, okay, here we're in Nebraska. Do you see where we are? Because that area of Nebraska with the tower is right on the edge of the North Platte. It's right on the edge, and it's actually in that peninsula between the North and South Platte convergence. And that's where it is, and it's on the edge. That's where we expect to find towers and things like that. So it's kind of cool. We'd like to be able to show you that better in the future. Yeah, good question, thank you. Is that all you have? Good enough? Good start? Okay.
All right. I got a couple of questions. One is, I think I missed this because I was running around doing things while you were talking, but you mentioned in there Kolk formations, K-O-L-K. What are those? Or
Uh-oh, I turned it on. We'll see what happens. A Kolk is a turbulent whirlpool.
okay.
That's, geologists, you know, it's like, I found this in vet school. They couldn't call it just one name for that nerve. They have to call it, here it's this name, and you remember that. And then this name gets a little farther than this. Why don't you just call the whole nerve the same thing? Well, they just got to make it technical. And a Kolk is a turbulent whirlpool. That's all it is. So I just had to throw that in to show like I know something. Okay, you know, besides the backside of cows. So, okay, there we go.
And final question, are you familiar with the Dakota Ridge, which we call the hogback over here, where Dinosaur Ridge exists? And there are cuts occasionally. As you go down the ridge, there's a cut that looks like a breach in a dam where the water's been down cutting. Do you have any idea what those are from? Are those in fact breaches where the water came over? Or are they more akin to the hanging valleys?
That's real easy for me to answer. Real easy. I don't know. I haven't explored that area. I literally was, you know, when I was filming Fisher Towers, that's only 30 miles from the border to Colorado. And I just wanted to get over there and film that area and look at it. I had time restraints and I had to go over to the Grand Canyon. So that's my next plan, to get over to this part of into Colorado and film those areas and see what we can see. But I don't have any answers at this point. No, it'd be interesting to see once we get above it to really look at it, see what we have there. Yeah, great question. Let me say a couple things. I have some books with me. I have some of Michael Ord's original book on Lake Missoula Flood, if you want it. I've got some pamphlets back there that are free. They're in the little book, little stack thing. So it has photographs of the basic structures from Glacial Lake Missoula Flood, has the story of Glacial Lake Missoula Flood, and then Mike Mueller, one of my partners in crime in this business, he wrote one on the Scopes monkey trial. You'll find that good. There's not too many of those, so first come, first serve. There's a great book by a good author. Oh, it's a really good book by the name of Dr. Kevin Horton.
Horton.
You heard of him too, yeah.
Him, yeah.
All right, it's back there. I only have a couple of those, so I'm sorry. The last group bought them out. So, and there's a few other books. There's also a little pack from a conference we had in Missoula. We paid a lot to have it professionally filmed, and they actually didn't do that great of a job. We do better than ourselves. But we have it on a little flash drive. It looks like a little credit card, and you flip the flash drive out and stick it into your USB drive, and it'll play about 15-minute sessions from, we have two historians. Bill Federer is a world historian. We have from, what's their name of the business? Wall Builders. Have their speaker there talking about the history, the Christian history of America. We have Randy Galusa giving some of his information. And we also have some of the first versions of what you just saw tonight on there. And those are $18. So if you'd like one of those, feel free to stop by and pick that up. Finally, most importantly, there's a sign-up sheet if you'd like to get our newsletter. It mostly comes by email, so I recommend you get email. We will send a printed copy out once a year too. So that's available to you. Okay?
I think we're done.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Okay. So I'll just let you all know, if you weren't here tonight, you really missed it. So.
Everybody else has been here.
Yeah.
All right, well, I could probably rest assured that nobody got insulted by that, right? Okay, so here are a few announcements. Our upcoming speakers, October 10th, will be Dr. Brian Catalucci. He is the founding president of Rocky Mountain Creation Fellowship, and he will be speaking on information, how it is fatal to evolution. November 14th, a guy by the name of Marv Schaefer. He is the president of Missouri Association for Creation, which is where I hail from, by the way. He is, i.e. I'm from Missouri, okay? So anyway, he's going to be speaking on creation, science in the Bible. Then December 12th, we welcome back Bill Jack from Worldview Academy. He's going to be speaking on whatever, the answer to secular thinking. So if you know Bill Jack, you know why I said it that way. Anyway, and I think that's all we have for tonight. Does anybody know of anything I missed? All right. So, do we have refreshments tonight? Yes, okay, so we have refreshments in the normal place. So, feel free to go over there and grab something and have fun and fellowship. And yes, Ken?
A special thank you to our speaker.
Oh. Yeah, you're the first speaker that's got this many rounds of applause, so.
I'm honored.